The story begins by introducing a beautiful young woman named Lin Wonbai. People believe she's going to marry Jiang Moon-chen, who is in line to inherit the Jiang company. Many people believe this because for years, Lin is the only girl ever to be seen with him. The scene then shifts to an ocean where a villager, Sia, is busy fishing on a boat. After catching some fish, she returns to the shore and gathers her friends' items, allowing them to leave early. Right then, she notices her longtime crush Kyung walking towards her. He approaches her and mentions that he's going to get married soon. Sia gets excited, thinking that Kyung is talking about them. However, Kyung points to a girl nearby, Jane, and reveals that he will marry her. He also mentions that Jane's father has promised to promote them within the factory after their marriage. Sia is heartbroken and then baffled when Kyung gives her a pearl as a parting gift. Angry, Sia tells him that she will find a guy 1,000 times better than him. Next, we are introduced to Jiang Moon-chen, who is about to inherit the Jiang group of companies after the board of directors meeting. As he walks into the company's building, Jiang's brother Xiao approaches him and asks how he managed to become the favorite grandson. When Jiang ignores him and walks away, the bitter Xiao commands his secretary to keep an eye on Jiang. Inside, Jiang's grandfather congratulates him for completing the assigned project on time and provides him with an envelope of pictures. However, before letting him inherit the company, the grandfather puts forward a condition: find the girl in the picture and get engaged to marry her. In the next scene, Kyung is getting married to Jane and everyone is happy for him. Sia is also in the crowd and she slips and falls as the couple walks past her. Jane notices her and begins berating Sia in front of everyone. She disses her appearance, height, and character, then says no one would ever want to marry someone like her. Right then, Xiao arrives and attempts to help Sia up, but before he can do so, Jiang arrives, confronts him, saying that Sia is his woman. Xiao argues, saying that the media claims Lin is his fiancée and he should go back to her. However, Jiang threatens to short sell all his stocks if he stays, compelling him to leave. After this, Jiang carries Sia to his car and puts her in the back seat. His driver suggests taking Sia to freshen up before taking her to the grandfather, but Jiang refuses to do so. He hopes if the grandfather sees Sia in this pitiful condition, he will change his mind. On the other hand, Xiao calls Lin and tells her everything about Sia and Jiang. As they drive to meet the grandfather, Jiang smells an unpleasant odor coming from Sia and sees sweat on her hair. When she tries to clean it with a cloth, he stops her. Sia responds by saying that she doesn't appreciate anyone touching her without permission. She also warns Jiang not to get too close or try to kiss her. Jiang scoffs and wonders what kind of crazy his grandfather has chosen for him. Soon, they arrive at Jiang's house and Sia is in awe of the incredible mansion. Inside, she's captivated by an antique marble stone in the hallway. She touches it, appreciating its texture. The grandfather's personal assistant, Mu Chuan, explains that it's one of the master's favorite pieces. Just then, Lin enters and meets Jiang. Sia is shocked to see the top model from a TV series standing in front of her and hides behind Chuan. When the personal assistant steps aside, Lin sees Sia and smells her, expressing disgust. Next, they go to meet the grandfather. At first, he mistakes Lin for Sia and praises her. But then, with the help of Chuan, he realizes Sia's presence. He mentions that she looks the same as he remembers her from her childhood. He hints that Sia is there for a specific purpose and will gradually come to learn about it. After a brief chat, the grandfather leaves, telling Sia to make herself comfortable and get to know the other family members. Once he's gone, both Jiang and Lin exit the room, leaving Sia alone. Sia then wanders around the house and once again slips and nearly falls. And once again, Xiao arrives in the nick of time and catches her. Our heroine is so happy to see him that she imagines herself joyfully dancing with him. However, the strong odor coming from Sia makes it difficult for Xiao to hold on to her. As a result, both of them fall to the ground, with Sia on top of Xiao. Meanwhile, Lin asks Jiang why his grandfather selected Sia for him. The latter replies that he has absolutely no idea. When Lin asks him if he's really going to marry her, Jiang remains silent and walks away. In the next scene, Xiao takes Sia to another room and orders a bunch of designer clothes for her. To his dismay, Sia doesn't like any of them, compelling him to send her for a makeover. At the same time, Jiang brings a beautiful dress for Sia and hands it over to his assistant. When Lin asks him about the dress, he replies that it's the same one his mother wore when she insulted his grandfather in front of everyone. He believes it will trigger his grandfather, who hates the dress, into hating the person wearing it. Elsewhere, Sia is being transformed by a makeup artist and having her hair done for the very first time. After hair and makeup is done, the artist hands it back to Sia, saying it contains a dress that Jiang had brought for her. The artist adds that it's very rare for Jiang to select a dress for anyone. Following this, Sia, wearing the dress, walks up to Jiang, who is waiting in the hall for someone. Unfortunately, as she stands in front of him, her heel slips and she falls on Jiang. Embarrassed, she quickly gets up and stands aside. Right then, Lin arrives in her new dress and asks Jiang how she looked. The latter replies that she is looking fine, and the two leave with Lin holding Jiang's hand, trying to stake her claim. On their way to the family function, they notice Xiao sneaking off alone alone and talking to someone over the phone. While Lin and Jiyoung arrive at the function, Sia is still waiting for someone to pick her up at the salon. Unfortunately, it's late and the salon is closing. Sia then walks out and calls someone from a bus stop, but the other person doesn't pick up the call and it starts to rain, chilling Sia to the bone. Meanwhile, Jiyoung looks at every person entering the party but fails to see Sia. He then decides to go and find her. On the other hand, Sia is walking in the middle of the road alone. Right then, a car suddenly approaches her from behind and she falls to the ground. After this, people gather around her and try to talk to her, believing that she got spooked by the car. Fortunately, Jiyoung arrives and asks the crowd to disperse. He then notices that she's freezing cold and puts his coat over her. As soon as he does, Sia stands up and hugs him tightly, mentioning that he is the only one who cares for her. Hesitantly, Jiyoung also hugs her back and comforts her. The scene then shifts to the party where Chuan and the grandfather arrive on stage and are ready to announce the purpose of the gathering. We also see Xiao at the party with the new girl by his side. Here, the grandfather talks about his childhood friend and their promise to become in-laws. He says that they couldn't fulfill that promise with their sons and daughters, so now they want to fulfill that promise through their grandchildren. The grandfather goes on to say that his friend is no longer with them, so he wants to keep their relationship alive, with Xiao getting engaged to Sia next month. Xiao is shocked to hear this, as he thought Jiyoung was supposed to marry Sia. In the following scene, Jiyoung tells Sia that it's getting late and the grandfather is waiting for them at the party. He asks her to get into the car and gives her a towel to dry herself. Inside the car, he notices a bruise on Sia's hand. She insists that she's okay, but Jiyoung doesn't listen to her and immediately calls a doctor. As they get home, a doctor hurriedly arrives and goes straight to look at the bruise. However, he's surprised at how terribly minor the bruise is. He then sarcastically says that it will heal itself. An embarrassed Jiyoung pretends to get a call and leaves the room. The doctor tells Sia that he has never seen Jiyoung so concerned about anyone else before, and she's a first. Soon, Jiyoung returns and the doctor leaves, but not before asking him to take care of Sia. Following this, the two leave for the party, and in the car, Jiyoung informs Sia that she is supposed to marry Xiao next month. As soon as she hears this, she refuses to marry him. Jiyoung asks the reason, and she replies that she's not interested in him. She states that any relationship in which the partners have no interest in each other will definitely never work. When she looks outside, she notices a beach and asks Jiyoung to stop the car. She then excitedly walks out to the beach and begins hollering. She pulls Jiyoung closer, saying it's the perfect time and place to experience beautiful scenery. The scene then shifts to an angry Xiao approaching Chuan about the decision of his marriage. Chuan tells him that he had no idea that his grandfather would select Sia for him. Clearly pissed, the latter decides to go confront him, but Chuan stops him, reminding him that the stubborn old man rarely changes his mind. Next, Jiyoung speaks to Sia and tells her that if she's not interested in marrying Xiao, he will talk to his grandfather and discuss it. He then drops her in front of her home and prepares to leave. However, when Sia notices a big house being built there, she stops him. At this moment, Chuan approaches them and reveals that if Sia agrees to marry Xiao, the house will be hers, and if she doesn't, she will get nothing. Flabbergasted, Sia asks if she has any other options, and Chuan replies with a no. Hearing this, she faints, and Jiyoung carries her to his car and brings her back home. At home, Jiyoung goes straight to the grandfather and confronts him for destroying Sia's house. The old man responds to the contrary, saying that he's providing her with everything, including marrying Xiao. Jiyoung defends Sia and makes it clear that he can't just make decisions for others without their consent or permission. The grandfather replies that he is doing what he promised their parents, taking care of them and preparing for a bright future. Enraged, Jiyoung states that he is controlling Xiao and forcing him to follow his orders. However, the grandfather replies that he needs to obey his elders' wishes. Frustrated beyond words, Jiyoung walks away. On the other hand, Chuan brings Sia to her new room and welcomes her to make herself comfortable. After this, as she lies on the luxurious bed, Xiao enters the room and holds her tight, accusing her of coming into his life and ruining it on purpose. He also gets on top of her and begins undoing her shirt buttons. Afraid, Sia screams and he finally lets go. But before he leaves, he tells her to stay away from him. The next morning, everyone gathers around the table for breakfast, including Sia. The grandfather suggests she sit beside Xiao, but she grabs her plate and heads towards Jiyoung. Nervous, she sits beside him and guzzles some wine, mistaking it for water. After a while, the booze hits her and she is forced to leave. Sia feels so tipsy that she staggers into Jiyoung's room and crashes on his bed. Fortunately, Jiyoung approaches her and before anyone can see her there, carries her to her room. After a while, Chuan enters Sia's room and tells her that in order to enjoy the luxuries of the Jiang family, she must make a contribution. She is then asked to clean Xiao's room daily. With really no choice, our poor heroine begrudgingly agrees. The following day, Sia is cleaning Xiao's room and he keeps harassing her, making her clean the same spot over and over. Later, she returns to her room and decides to win over Xiao's heart. She makes a list of things men like to use in her plan. According to her plan, she gets drunk at night and enters Xiao's room. She waits for him to arrive and plans to fall in his arms so she can seduce him. But unfortunately, Jiang enters the room and she mistakes him for Xiao. Sia then falls into his arms and begins kissing him passionately. When she moves forward to unbutton his shirt, Jiang stops her and tells her that he's not who she thinks she is. Embarrassed, Sia apologizes profusely and rushes to her room. Here we can see both Sia and Jiang are greatly impacted by the sudden kiss and cannot sleep at night. Next, Sia is so afraid to face Jiang that she decides to leave the house. She packs her clothes and climbs down a ladder to leave. However, Xiao notices her doing so and accuses her of trying to steal items from the house. Sia tries to explain, but Xiao still turns her bag upside down and spills her belongings. When he finally realizes that she's trying to leave, he is shocked that a village girl would reject a rich prize like him. Despite this, Xiao talks to Sia and helps her escape the house. He also makes her promise that she will never return. Unbeknownst to them, Jiang is watching all of this from his room and getting jealous. After this, Sia goes to a hotel and books a room for herself. As soon as she enters, a girl from her village notices her. The following morning, the cunning girl tells her friends, including Jane, that she saw Xiao dropping Sia at the hotel, gossiping that Jiang's family must have thrown her out of their house. Hearing this, Jane smiles, thinking she has the upper hand on Sia. On the other hand, after not finding Sia around the house, Jiang grabs Xiao by his collar and asks her what he did with her. Enraged, Xiao suggests Jiang get married to Sia if he cares for her so much. To his surprise, the latter agrees to do so and begins searching for her. Meanwhile, the girl from earlier who noticed Sia in the hotel puts a note, supposedly from Jiang, in front of Sia's room. In the note, it says Jiang will be waiting for her at a given location at 9 p.m. Sia gets the note and leaves the room to meet Jiang. As soon as she walks out of her hotel room, two girls led by Jane follow her and bring her to a warehouse-like place. Suddenly, one of them grabs Sia from behind and, following Jane's orders, plunges her face underwater multiple times. Finally, lacking oxygen, Sia falls unconscious. The girls then run away, leaving Sia to die. In the following scene, after learning that Sia had not returned to her hotel room, Jiang contacts the manager of the hotel and asks about her departure. He discovers that Sia left the hotel with a group of village girls. Concerned, Jiang searches the city for her and finally arrives at the warehouse. He is shocked to find her lying unconscious on the floor. Jiang hurriedly picks her up and tries to rouse her. Fortunately, Sia opens her eyes and hugs Jiang and recalls the torture she endured. Later, Jiang brings her home and shouts at Xiao for helping her escape. As Sia has developed a fever, Jiang takes care of her the whole night and eventually falls asleep beside her. The next morning, Jiang's secretary approaches him and informs him that Sia's ex-boyfriend's wife and her friends are the ones who attacked Sia in the warehouse. Livid, Jiang is determined to get revenge. After a while, when Sia opens her eyes, Jiang asks her how she's feeling and she says she's feeling fine. He then asks her to get ready and takes her to a factory. Sia is surprised because it's the same place she was tortured. Jiang asks her to follow him and tells her that he has arranged everything. As they enter the warehouse, we can see Jane and the two other girls being tortured in the same way they did to Sia. Surprisingly, Sia is horrified and begs Jiang to stop. He stops, but warns the girls to never bother Sia ever again. Outside, Jiang suggests Sia toughen up so that no one will ever think of bullying her again. In reply, she mentions that she grew up without parents and has been through worse. However, she did feel strong when Jiang stood beside her and encouraged her. With these words, Jiang hugs her tight. All of a sudden, he asks her to marry him. Sia is dumbfounded, but somehow replies with a yes. However, Jiang soon reveals that he just wants to get married to gain control over the Jiang group of companies. He also wants to make it clear that once he gains control and everything is settled, they can divorce and he will guarantee her a luxurious life. Hesitantly, Sia agrees to go along with Jiang's plan. Next, the two approach the grandfather and Jiang asks him to call off the wedding between Xiao and Sia. Surprised, the old man asks the reason, and Jiang replies that he and Sia are in love and want to get married. The grandfather confirms it with Sia when she nods her head in agreement. He then tells Jiang that he will disclose his decision soon. However, after the two leave, the grandfather calls Chuan and urges him to keep an eye on them, assuming that they might be planning something against him. As per the order, Chuan begins following Jiang and Sia, but the latter realizes it. She tells Jiang about it and also thinks Chuan might have a crush on her. However, Jiang simply laughs at her theory and pulls her closer, making her fall on him. After this, the two walk outside and discuss ways to convince the grandfather that they are in love. Jiang says that his grandfather is very clever and they need to act naturally in order for him to believe it. In the following scene, Jiang Ji-young meets with Lin and asks for her help. He wants her to teach him and Sia how to act naturally. Lin then takes the two to a movie set and arranges a romantic script for them to act. To her surprise, after a couple of failed attempts, the two express their feelings so naturally that even the director is impressed. This makes Lin very jealous, and after reaching home, she breaks down in tears. The next day, the grandfather takes a look at all the romantic images captured between Ji-young and Sia and believes them to be genuine. He then accepts their relationship and agrees to let them marry. However, before that, they have to successfully complete one final project, the Bay Resort. Unfamiliar with the project, Sia asks Xiao about it. In reply, the latter reveals that the project has been at a standstill for 3 years because of a stubborn household, which is stopping them from building the resort. Here she learns that the household is in a rural fishing village and the family refuses to sell. Later, Sia and Zhang visit the owner of the household, Mr. Xu, and ask to speak with him. However, the man rudely tells them to leave. Right then, Sia feels a sudden urge to relieve herself, so she enters the house to use the bathroom. Surprisingly, here we can see a picture of someone who looks similar to Sia. After hesitating for a while, Mr. Xu finally agrees to talk to them. He then says that he has a lot of memories related to the area that they are looking to take over. So, he politely rejects their proposal and asks them to leave. As they walk away, Ji-young asks Sia if she knows anything about fishing, and the latter proudly replies with a yes. He then suggests they go to the beach and fish, and Sia agrees. To their surprise, they notice Mr. Xu on the beach preparing to catch some fish. He doesn't seem skilled, so Sia approaches him to give him some tips. Impressed, Mr. Xu suggests they meet later that night. At night, Ji-young and Sia arrive at the beach to meet Mr. Xu. When he asks them why they were sent to get him to sell, Sia replies that their grandfather put it on them as a condition for their marriage. After hearing this, Mr. Xu reveals the real reason he's not leaving the place. He mentions that in his youth, he fell in love with a girl and they used to go fishing in the same area. Here, it's revealed that the woman he loved is none other than Sia's mother, and the picture we saw before inside his room was of her. Sia and Ji-young are both moved by his story. Following this, Mr. Xu asks for the contract and signs the papers. He then wishes them a happy union and departs. After he is out of sight, Ji-young receives a call and walks away from Sia to take it. Unbeknownst to them, someone is keeping an eye on the couple. As soon as Ji-young walks away, a truck veers towards Sia and is about to hit her, but Ji-young pushes her out of the way and gets struck by the truck instead. Worried, Sia picks him up and frantically takes him to the hospital. In the next scene, Chuan talks to the grandfather about Ji-young's accident and informs him that he's out of danger. Here, it's revealed that the grandfather is the one who arranged the truck. When Chuan questions him about it, he silences him and tells him to leave. At the hospital, after reading the news about Ji-young's accident, Lin arrives to see him. She simply mentions that she's there to say goodbye as she has got a job at a big production house. After she leaves, the grandfather enters the room and informs Ji-young that they have got the go-ahead with the resort and he will be handing over the company to him in the following week. The grandfather also meets Sia and tells her that her house is ready and suggests she take a look at it. Later, when Ji-young and Sia return home after doing some shopping for their upcoming wedding, they are shocked to see a beautiful lady standing at the entrance. The grandfather introduces the girl as Sumei, the daughter of Su's group of companies. He then says that she is Ji-young's fiancée. As soon as Ji-young hears this, he gets enraged and pulls Sia closer. He then follows his grandfather into his room and questions his decisions. The grandfather tells Ji-young that after he takes over the company, Su's group will benefit him a lot. Frustrated, Ji-young asks why he agreed to his and Sia's marriage in the first place. Here is where the real drama unfolds. Sia isn't actually the granddaughter of the old man's friend. She's the daughter of the grandfather's illegitimate son, who married Sia's mother and tragically died in a car accident. The grandfather orchestrated this elaborate scheme to deceive Mr. Xu, making him believe that Ji-young's family had accepted Sia's mother and treated her well. All of this was designed to manipulate him into signing the contract. Hearing all this, Ji-young becomes furious, so he yells at his grandfather before storming away. However, when he opens the door, he's surprised to find Sia there, seemingly having overheard the entire conversation. She reveals that she knows the truth and shows them the keys to her new house. With a bittersweet farewell and a wish for his happiness, she walks out of the house. In the final scene, Sia is alone at home crying, looking at the dress Ji-young had given her. On the news, she reads that Ji-young is supposed to be marrying Sumei that very night. Overwhelmed by the situation, Sia goes to the beach at night wearing the same dress Ji-young had given her. As she gazes at the beautiful beach, Ji-young appears and unexpectedly asks her to marry him. The drama concludes with Sia happily accepting his proposal and the two sharing a heartfelt kiss.